I was sitting in a corner booth at Leela's Cafe on a gray Atlanta afternoon, laptop open, sipping a lukewarm caramel latte I could barely afford. My eyes stung, not from the coffee, but from the number on the screen. $54,782.16. That was my student loan balance. I stared at it like it had personally insulted me. I just graduated 2 years earlier with a degree in social work and landed a full-time job at a nonprofit. The salary, a shade over $42,000. It sounded decent when I signed the contract, but once taxes, rent, gas, and my little brother's asthma medication came into play, the math stopped working. That day, I just made the minimum payment. Again. And the weight of it, the sheer emotional exhaustion of knowing I was working myself into the ground just to stay afloat, cracked something open inside me. I didn't even realize I was crying until I saw a napkin slide across the table. "You okay?" I looked up. There he was. Tall, clean-cut, blue-tailored suit that looked like it had a name. Eyes too calm for someone who just interrupted a stranger's breakdown. "Sorry, student loans." "Ah," he smiled. "I've been there. Or I knew people who were." His name was Nathan Carter, a 38-year-old real estate developer from Dallas in town for a project. He asked if he could sit. I should have said no, but his presence was oddly calming. Within 10 minutes, I was telling him about my job, my dreams, my burnout, my guilt for not doing more. He never once looked at his phone. When I joked, "Unless you can erase debt with that Rolex," he replied, "You'd be surprised what I can do." That was the beginning. We had dinner that weekend, then brunch the next. He sent me books, self-help, finance, travel. Once, I opened my door to a bouquet of sunflowers and a handwritten note. "You are never meant to struggle so much to be good." I fell. Fast, hard. No man had ever made me feel more seen, more listened to. And when he offered to fly me to Dallas for a long weekend, I hesitated, but I went. He didn't pressure me. He just said, "Let me show you a version of life where you're not drowning." 6 months later, he proposed. On a rooftop in Savannah, string lights, a string quartet, a ring that shimmered like it belonged to someone wealthier than I'd ever be. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Then, a week before the wedding, I opened an email that would change everything. "Your loan balance has been paid in full." No explanation, no "from" field, just gone. I called Nathan, sobbing, shaking. "You did this?" I never wanted my wife to carry a burden that someone like me could easily lift. I thought I'd hit the jackpot, but now I see it for what it was. Not a gift, a transaction. The first 3 weeks of marriage were blissful, almost surreal. Nathan rented us a condo in Bughead with floor-to-ceiling windows, a rainfall shower, and a wine fridge I didn't know how to use. I kept waiting for the moment I'd feel out of place, but instead I felt lucky, chosen. Then came the planner. I'd bought it at Target, a simple pastel blue with "You got this" stamped in gold. It was $19. I didn't think twice. When it arrived, Nathan asked casually, "What's this?" "Just the planner. Thought I'd start tracking appointments better." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. But his tone changed. "You didn't run this by me." I laughed. "It's a planner." "That's not the point. I paid off your debt, I've covered our home, our expenses. We agreed we'd be mindful about purchases. I hadn't agreed to anything. Not really. But I apologized. I even returned it. It was easier than making him upset. From then on, I started texting before buying anything. A new top? Hey babe, is it okay if I grab this? It's on sale. Groceries. Can I pick up almond milk instead of regular? It's a bit pricier. He never asked for control. He just made sure I felt guilty if I didn't offer it. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I started to shrink. Nathan believed in efficiency. He hated what he called emotional clutter. That meant no spontaneous brunches, no long phone calls with friends, and definitely no last-minute visits to my mom. Why waste gas driving to see people who drain you? I didn't argue. At first, it even sounded logical. But over time, the boundaries became walls. He blocked Naya, my best friend, on my phone while I was asleep. She's always planting doubts. That's not what you need. He asked me to uninstall Instagram. It's toxic for your mind, and frankly, for your modesty. He had me deactivate Venmo. No reason for you to send or receive money. I've got you covered. One day he came home and said, I had a spare key made for your car, just in case I need to move it. The next morning, my car was gone. He'd taken it in for a routine check without asking. I felt myself unraveling in invisible threads. Still married, still smiling, but only when he was watching. 3 months in, he brought up children. I was brushing my teeth when he said, we should start trying soon. I spat into the sink, laughed. What for? A baby, brah. It's time. Time? I don't think I'm ready. His jaw clenched. Barely, but I saw it. We agreed you'd grow into this. I freed you from that 55K anchor. I didn't do that so you could flit around chasing side dreams. I want to go back to school and raise a baby, he said flatly. He started tracking my cycle, sent me ovulation kits, marked fertile days on our shared calendar with the red heart. I couldn't bring myself to say no when he reached for me. Not when I remembered how he'd once said, you don't realize how much I've done for you. So I closed my eyes, let it happen, and hated myself afterward. My body was no longer mine. My future wasn't mine. Even my silence wasn't mine.
It started with the box in the closet. He was away on business, Miami supposedly. I was organizing our shelves when a folder slipped down from the top. Inside, court records, a child custody form, a marriage license, and an old driver's license with a name I didn't recognize. Carmen Alvarez. Her photo was recent. Her name was signed on legal docs. And the kicker? Their marriage was never dissolved. I sat on the floor, numb, my chest pounding so loudly I thought I was going to faint. I typed her name into Facebook. There she was. Her profile photo was a selfie in a bookstore. Her pinned post read, "Just because he pays doesn't mean he loves you. Sometimes it just means he's investing in your silence." I messaged her. I don't know what I expected. She responded, and her first line made my whole world tilt sideways. "Let me guess. He paid off your debt." told you he could give you a better life, then slowly turned it into a life you didn't recognize. I didn't sleep that night. I sat curled up in the living room, wrapped in a throw blanket Nathan bought from some boutique store in Dallas, like a trophy of comfort. But I didn't feel safe. I felt watched, even though I was alone. The folder sat on the coffee table, its contents fanned out like a crime scene. A marriage certificate, custody forms, court letters addressed to Carmen Alvarez Carter. I Googled the address. It was real. She was real. And Nathan was still legally married. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were separated. Maybe he forgot to file. Maybe it was some bureaucratic error. But deep down, I knew. He didn't forget. He just never thought I'd find out. At 2:11 a.m., I typed out a message to Carmen on Facebook. Hi, I know this is probably strange, but I think we're connected in a way neither of us expected. I just found your name in my husband's legal documents. If you're open to it, I need to talk. She replied 5 minutes later. Is his name Nathan Carter? Real estate guy from Dallas? I froze. My hands trembled. Yes. There was a long pause. Then, you're not the first. Call me. That night, I sat on the floor and listened as Carmen told me the truth I had been too blind to see. Carmen's voice had a weight to it. Calm but tired. Like someone who had carried a secret too long and was finally ready to let it go. She told me Nathan had paid off her $72,000 in law school debt during their engagement. At first, it was magical. He made her feel lucky, special. Then the rules started. The monitoring, the shutdown of her independence. He made her quit her firm, saying it was too demanding for a future mother. The same lines, the same tactics, the same illusion of generosity twisted into control. I tried to leave, she said, but when I did, he withheld everything. Bank access, car keys, even the phone he bought me. Eventually, she got out. But the legal process was still dragging. She hadn't told many people because who believes a woman who says the man who saved her was also the one who broke her? That's when she added, "You're not the only one. I've spoken to 2 others, Daniela from Florida, Jasmine from Austin. He finds women with potential and debt, then uses one to erase the other. He wasn't generous. He was calculated. And I was just another project." Carmen and I talked for days, then weeks. And soon we were in touch with Jasmine, a former nurse who'd lost her license after spiraling into depression under Nathan's control. He had paid off her tuition, monitored her schedule, told her when she could and couldn't work. And when she tried to leave, he threatened to make sure no one hires a disloyal woman. She believed him for a long time. But now we were all connecting the same dots. The gifts that came with strings, the perfect beginning that always ended in emotional ruin, the calculated timing of control disguised as love. We compiled documents, screenshots, emails, the same phrases used with all of us. "I've already done more for you than anyone else ever will. You don't need the world. You have me. You owe me trust."
Carmen's friend, a freelance journalist for a relationship trauma blog, helped us structure the story. It was published under the headline, "The Debt Collector: How One Man Turned Generosity into Control." The article blew up, first on Twitter, then Reddit, then TikTok, where a creator read our words aloud with dramatic music and overlaid screenshots of our redacted messages. Over 1 million views in 24 hours. Nathan's name trended, podcasts reached out, legal advocacy groups asked if we wanted to pursue joint litigation. He emailed me, "You've destroyed my life." I never replied, because he hadn't thought twice when he slowly dismantled mine. Leaving wasn't a moment. It was a series of choices, quiet, careful. I started by creating new passwords, then printing out every document with my name on it. I opened a P.O. box, transferred the title of my card to my name, opened a checking account at a credit union, moved my birth certificate and passport to a friend's house. When Nathan left for a conference, I packed a single suitcase and drove 6 hours north to Chicago, where my college roommate, Tasha, still lived. She'd always said, "If you ever need to vanish, show up at my door. No questions asked." She didn't ask questions. She just opened the door, hugged me, and said, "I've got you now." In that tiny guest room, surrounded by books and secondhand furniture, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. I filed a legal separation request. Nathan contested it. Then he threatened to sue for defamation. He claimed I was twisting generosity into bitterness. But this time, I wasn't alone. We had each other, and we had proof. I enrolled in a graduate program, this time on a full scholarship. I started therapy. I started breathing. I wasn't healed, but I was finally free. It's been over a year. Nathan's firm lost several contracts once the article resurfaced in a major podcast. A few of his victims filed civil suits. Others joined a support group Carmen started for women who've experienced coercive control, a term I never knew existed until I lived it. Me? I rebuilt slowly. I still have moments. Days where I doubt myself, nights where I flinch when someone raises their voice. But I also laugh now, I make plans, I say no without guilt. I speak at women's shelters about coercive control, about how manipulation doesn't always come with bruises. Sometimes it comes with diamond rings and loan forgiveness. But freedom bought with conditions is not freedom. Nathan erased my debt, but I reclaimed my voice. And that was something he could never own. I didn't speak Nathan's name for weeks after I left. Not in therapy, not to Tasha, not even in my journal. It felt like saying it might summon him, like some ghost that still lived in the spaces between my breaths. But silence carries weight. And sometimes, the longer you hold it, the heavier it becomes. So one morning, I finally said it out loud, to myself, alone in the bathroom mirror. Just his name. And then, "You don't own me anymore." I started writing everything down after that. Not for revenge, not for the internet. For me. I wrote about the time he tracked my cycle, the time I flinched when he put a hand on my back, the time I stared at a receipt for 10 minutes because I was afraid to spend $4.99 on shampoo, the time I realized I hadn't heard my own voice without fear in months. Each entry felt like lifting a brick off my chest. Little by little, the girl I used to be started to speak again. Healing didn't come like a flood. It came like sunlight through closed blinds. Slow, tentative, warming one small space at a time. I met Malik in a community development workshop 6 months after I left Nathan. He was quiet, kind, the kind of man who didn't fill silences to dominate them. He let them exist. He offered me his chair before he asked for my name. We started slow. A few conversations after class, then coffee, then a walk in the park that turned into 3 hours on a bench, sharing stories neither of us had told anyone else. I told him everything by the 4th date. I expected him to flinch, maybe pull back. He didn't. He just said, "That sounds like hell. I'm glad you made it out." No judgment, no advice, just presence. Malik never tried to fix me. He let me choose my own pace. And because of that, I found myself trusting again. Not just him, but me. He showed me what love looked like when it didn't ask to be repaid.
I gave my first talk at a local women's center on a rainy Saturday. There were 12 women in the room, some with kids on their laps, some with bruises you couldn't see unless you knew where to look. I told them about Nathan, not the details, but the pattern. He never hit me, but he made me feel like I needed his permission to breathe. Some nodded, others cried. One woman whispered, "I thought I was crazy." I looked her in the eye and said what I wish someone had said to me. "You're not. You were just too kind to believe someone could use love as a leash." Word spread. I started getting asked to speak at colleges, shelters, advocacy groups. It never got easier. My voice still shook. My hands still trembled when I said his name. But every time I did, the fear got smaller. I wasn't just surviving. I was helping others escape too. The day I saw Nathan in court, he looked thinner, paler, still polished, but without the same shine. He avoided my eyes. The court wasn't for criminal charges. Those were still pending. This was civil. Emotional distress, coercive control, financial manipulation. I didn't attend to win. I attended to reclaim. When the judge asked me why I brought the case forward, I said, "Because no woman should have to say thank you for being caged." He didn't speak during the proceedings. His lawyer did the talking. But when it was over and the judge ruled partially in our favor, ordered a financial settlement, acknowledged the coercion, I looked directly at Nathan. He looked away. That was enough for me. Not the money, not the ruling, just that he couldn't hold my gaze anymore. I now live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Chicago. It's small, the paint chips near the windows, the heater makes a weird knocking sound in the winter, but it's mine. I make coffee how I like it. I buy planners without asking. I say no and don't explain myself. I still write, I still speak, I still heal. Some days the memory of him creeps in, but now I meet it with strength, not shame. I keep a photo on my desk, not of him or of Malik or anyone else. It's of me, taken 6 months after I left. Hair undone, no makeup, sitting barefoot on the edge of a dock holding a journal and smiling so hard
It looked like I just remembered what joy felt like. Because I had. I no longer live a life I was rescued into. I live a life I chose. And every morning I wake up free, I remember this. Debt can be cleared by someone else, but healing, that's yours to earn. And freedom, that's something you never owe anyone for.